I'd love to talk a little bit on AI. How does that work with services like cybersecurity? Are we trusting the machine too much by involving AI, or is there that human element that's going to ensure that, there's still a level of control?
To answer your question with regards to, do we let the AI kind of take over, so to speak? I would say no. I wouldn't give it that much trust at the moment. And the reason I say that is because artificial intelligence as a technology is definitely, it's still in its fledgling stages. The most important thing that you want to keep in mind is you still have to keep your senses about you. What I'm finding is that a lot of people are forgetting the fact that when the AI consumes information, it doesn't leave, it's there forever, right? Say, back in the day, people would say, hey, be careful what you say, the government might be listening to you. Now we're at the point where everybody is sharing everything. But with the iPhones and the Android devices, what we found was that when apps were created, security wasn't first and foremost. Along with that came social media, and everybody was just handing over their information, given access to everybody, and as such, it's blowing up. It's actually much more exponentially concerning at the moment because with AI, people are just handing over whatever information that they can.
Hi everyone, welcome to the podcast for the Valor Group of Companies. I am today here with a guest that's just flown in fresh from Canada. We're going to have an amazing conversation today, something that's not your norm, but I want to dig deep and learn more about IT in general, about cybersecurity, about cyber threats and all sorts of other things. So hope you're going to find it very interesting. Today I'm joined with Jason Marilla. Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Harrods.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
How jet lagged are you? How are you feeling?
I'm actually all right. I keep really odd hours, and therefore jet lag isn't really that much of a problem for myself.
Good.
So
Yeah, fantastic. Well, welcome to the UAE and welcome to Dubai.
thank you.
So for those of you who don't know, Jason is working with us. Jason works as a independent consultant, and I'll let Jason obviously introduce himself properly. But in essence, IT architect, and what sounds really cool, a threat hunter. So tell us more about what you do, Jason.
Sure, absolutely. So right now, with regards to Axiom IT Solutions, IT 360, I'm currently working as an IT consultant slash cybersecurity consultant with them. I worked with Nayland, oh gosh, many moons ago, and we started the company together. And since taken a step back for a minute, just so I can start a cybersecurity company. Essentially, my original exposure to IT was more so on the cybersecurity side as opposed to IT.
Yeah.
And as such, an opportunity came about for me to start a cybersecurity company, and henceforth I said, okay, well, Neil, I'm gonna take a step back for a minute. I'm going to start a cybersecurity company, and then as such, I've since exited the cybersecurity company to a certain extent. I'm still providing some consultation, but now working once again with the Axiom team to provide the expertise.
I'm guessing you guys are a bit like a dentist or a doctor to certain people, where you're called in as and when required. So there'll be maybe some heavy lifting, and then you step back for a while.
I'd say so. It's definitely similar to a dentist or a doctor. You've got general dentist, doctor, general practitioners, then of course you've got specialists as well, right?
Yeah.
So I find myself more in the specialist role nowadays as opposed to the general practitioner.
Yeah.
With regards to the heavy lifting, absolutely, there's still going to be a need for that. But for the most part, I'm called in typically, as I describe myself. I'm the guy you need when you need to find the bad guys in the network,
Right.
or I'm the guy you need in the event something bad has already happened in the network.
Sure.
Hence the threat hunting side of the.
You mentioned starting a company, and obviously for context, I meet a lot of people. I do a lot of networking, not just in the UAE, but even in Saudi and the UK as well. We've got businesses in the UK, and across that journey, you meet people that have set up a company. Can you tell me a bit about your entrepreneurial journey and I guess what it takes to set up, run, and get a company through to success? That journey, if we can talk about that for a few minutes.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna have to give you some general descriptions here, but
Sure.
for the most part, what I've learned the most was the preparation side of things, right? So the one thing I found over starting several businesses is that without the proper identification of what your target is and how to prepare for that properly, you find yourself falling on your face more often than not, right? So you know, very simple things like, actually honing in on your demographic, like who you're actually selling to and what that product looks like. And then it's an iterative, process in perfecting that product or that service, right? When I started the company with Nayland many moons ago, it was mostly a service-based business, but it eventually evolved into, also a product sales business. And the reason for that was back in the day, and I might be aging myself a little bit here, back in the day, it was mostly, I guess what you would call ad hoc IT services. So someone would, call up and say, hey, there's something wrong with my computer. Can you help me out? And there was, and truth be told, there still isn't any regulatory body that kind of says this is the kind of IT service you should provide and so on and so forth. And therefore, there's a lot of room for interpretation or a lot of room to really accelerate past your peers, because if you're able to provide that very tweaked, honed-in product, you'll be able to provide great services, and therefore people will talk about your company more and more and more.
That's
But
really
again,
interesting.
but once again, you'll have to obviously prepare for that. You have to really know who you're selling to and what you're selling. And from there, things I would say work out. I wouldn't say it's like Field of Dreams where if you build it, they will come. There's obviously a lot of marketing involved and word of mouth and just active participation and actually telling people that you exist. But eventually.
I work within branding and marketing for a group of companies. So when I went to deep dive with Nayland and team in Canada around marketing and Axiom, I learned that a lot of it was word of mouth and not like the digital side, the typical Google display ads, shopping ads, meta ads, whatever it might be.
Absolutely.
That wasn't the case, and the whole business foundation was built on literally reputation and someone not renewing every time and staying with you guys, but also the kind of level of service you guys supply, which I want to obviously talk into in more detail. I guess just for anyone that doesn't know, what is an MSP?
So it's a managed services provider. So as I mentioned to you earlier, back in the day, it was very ad hoc IT service, right? So what the IT environment or industry evolved into was more of a service model where it was predetermined, pre-packaged. So instead of you calling, an IT company for random service, hey, something happened, something broke, the managed services provider would essentially be responsible for the ongoing maintenance of the system to ensure that that system is up and running, all the time, as opposed to running into a random, hey, help me, I have a problem there.
And you're calling a bit too late. So with that in mind and what you just said in terms of lack of regulation, does that mean that I can safely say that there are good and bad MSPs?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
And what I've found over the years, so I've been doing this for 30 plus years now, whether it be IT or cybersecurity, I've also found that because of that lack of regulation, you will see a new MSP pop up. And the challenge I find with most managed service providers is that either they're sold the marketing from another vendor, a software vendor of some sort that they would need to utilize in order to provide services. And most of the time, what I find is that the high cost of these software packages makes it really hard for not only for an MSP to be competitive, but also be liquid. Sorry, forgive me. Like some of them could be potentially taking a loss because they could be doing much more work than they should, even though some automation is supposed to save them from that, the vendor marketing. Right.
I'd love to talk a little bit on AI. Obviously, within the sector of AI, which is very much a buzzword in many industries or people I speak to, don't really understand capability, application, and the fact that it's a good thing to have automation or ease with use of technology and harnessing that power. But how does that work with services like cybersecurity? Because are we trusting the machine too much by involving AI, or is there that human element that's going to ensure that there's still a level of control? I guess you see where I'm going with this.
No, I completely understand. And I've actually found myself working in AI a lot more over the past year or so. Since it blew up, ChatGPT blowing up, it became a thing, right?
Yeah.
But prior to that, there were some technologies that were being used that had machine learning, which is a branch of AI, and essentially, for the most part, what you'd find AI in back in the day, or like just not too long ago, was an endpoint detection and response tool. So those are the
So
replacements
an
for
endpoint is like a
antivirus.
phone or a laptop, right?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. And I would say to answer your question with regards to do we like wait, or I'm paraphrasing, of course, do we let the AI kind of take over, so to
Yeah.
speak? I would say no. I wouldn't give it that much trust at the moment. And the reason I say that is because artificial intelligence as a technology is definitely, it's still in its fledgling stages
Sure.
in regards to application. So for
Yeah.
just to clarify, artificial intelligence and the research and development for it has been around for quite some time. However,
Yeah.
the applications are quite new,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
And I was having a conversation with a client some time ago, and they were asking me, it's like, what exactly is this AI stuff? And I said, well, you know what, don't overthink it, right? It's really software for the most part.
Yeah.
But the most important thing that you want to keep in mind is you still have to keep your senses about you. There's a lot of common sense still involved, because
Sure.
what I'm finding is that a lot of people are just forgetting the fact that when the AI consumes information, it doesn't leave. It's there forever, right?
Yeah.
Depending on which one you're using, of course, right?
Yeah.
If you can use offline artificial intelligence models that, obviously you keep to yourself. However, I described to him that artificial intelligence at the moment, the way it is evolving, is similar to the way smartphones came about, right?
Sure.
So, back in the day, it was very forgive me, but I would say it was a little bit more basic. You had flip phones and Nokias and such.
Yeah.
There was no smart activity happening in it. It was just literally a phone
Yeah.
that you can make voice calls on, or
SMSs.
send
Play
SMS.
Snake.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
And then eventually BlackBerry came about, and
Yeah.
BlackBerry built a end-to-end secure environment. The phone was secure, is encrypted, the whole network is encrypted,
Yeah.
and then lo and behold, the iPhone and the Android phones came about. And what you found after that launch, because it effectively destroyed BlackBerry's ability to compete.
Yeah.
But with the iPhones and the Android phones, the Android devices, what we're finding, or what we found, was that when apps were created, security wasn't first and foremost.
Right.
But let's be honest here, that that expression, there's an app for that.
Yeah.
It absolutely was true, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it's just
yeah.
so, and as such, we're now finding Android and Apple trying to reel back and say, no, 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 you have to, coincide with the requirements of Play Protect or something like that, or the Apple Store. You can't just be putting random software on there that could potentially be malicious,
Yeah.
for other people. And along with that came social media.
Yeah.
And everybody was just handing over their information. A good friend of mine that provides a lot of security awareness training, he used to say, back in the day, people would say, "Hey, be careful what you say. The government might be listening to you."
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now we're at the point where everybody is sharing everything, right?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
there's now this odd, you know, odd area in the world, or odd gray area where you have Meta that's having to defend themselves, or like ChatGPT for that matter, defending themselves about how they I guess, for lack of better words, potentially used publicly accessible information to train their AI platforms, and
Yeah.
as such, they're having to answer to regulatory bodies, say,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
that wasn't really a smart thing to do, or that's not acceptable because this is potentially copyrighted, or there's some artistic rights to this, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But we're in that stage now where the smartphones have been, I guess, for lack of better words, given access to everybody, and as
Yeah.
such, it's blowing up. It's actually much more exponentially concerning at the moment, because with AI, people are just handing over whatever information that they can hand over. And as such, I've been finding myself in a situation where I'm researching ways in order to be able to identify the private information that people normally submit. Because let's be honest here, you still have to keep business going, right?
Yeah.
You still have to interact and make money and so on. We're a capitalistic world, unfortunately,
Yeah.
and as such, private information, personal health information, and so on and so forth will eventually need to be shared. However, the consumption of that and how artificial intelligence is using that will definitely have to be controlled in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Really interesting insights, and taking us back to the evolution even of the phone, and therefore what that use of that phone was.
Sure.
I was a college student when the Nokia 8210,
Yeah.
8250s were coming out.
That's right.
Motorola flips, and then next thing you know, again, I was a BlackBerry user till 2017. So I kept it, even a lot of people had ditched one for my work phone because it's fantastic, right?
Yes.
But then you talk about now data, knowledge, information share, and the fact that people share everything, whether it's through social media, and then a lot of time on the work devices, people are using it for personal. Let's talk about, I guess I wanted to ask a question. Again, really basic questions. What's a CIO and what's a VCIO?
Yeah, it's CIO is a Chief Information Officer.
Yeah.
And a VCIO is a Virtual Chief Information Officer.
And are these generally within companies recruited in-house, or are they people that you get in as contractors?
Well, I think it comes down to the size of the organization and their complexity, right? So a virtual CIO is typically called in the event that an organization does not have the need of a full-time chief information officer.
Sure.
And the chief information officer's main task really is to help the organization direct what the how the use of technology will occur, and how it will coincide with operational requirements, right? So keeping that in mind, it puts that CIO in a position where they must know a lot about the technology being used by the business, along with what the business is doing, right? Because in order for a CEO or a COO to be able to refer to CIO and say, hey, we are now about to do this in our line of business, and we could be interacting with different countries and different regulation and so on and so forth. How do we, for example, handle privacy? How do we handle data collection? How do we handle all of these things in a secure way? Because ultimately the CEO and potentially a COO have to answer to different regulatory bodies and even their clients and their shareholders, of course, right?
Sure.
So as such,
there's even currently a breach of some sort of hacking in the UK. Obviously, I follow the news in the UK also. There's the gov.uk article day before yesterday, and also Marks and Spencer's, massive retailer, Harrods, they've just been hacked as well. So M&S have had to actually freeze operations and go, we don't recruit now, and there's panic internally, no doubt.
Certainly,
literally within the last 48 hours. So it's a real thing. Hacking's a real thing.
Absolutely.
Can we talk a little bit about obviously with Axiom, we supply a range of products. I guess we've got some buckets. We've got cybersecurity, managed IT, backup, disaster recovery, and governance, risk, and compliance.
Yes.
We're obviously here in the UAE at the moment. A lot of people are moving here from the West, be it Canada, America, and the UK. People are going, I'm going to go to Dubai. There's some, great life. It's hot. I find it very hot, as you can tell. I always have something to wipe my sweat. But it does get hot. But there's also a huge advantage for setting up businesses here. And then you've got Saudi Arabia. And within Saudi, I'm in talks at the moment with, the esports regulatory guys there. I've got friends that work on projects like Dalia Gate and Neom. These are amazing giga projects. Off the back of the giga projects is coming small and SME, small businesses that want to open up. Now, I might have run a business in England and I understand GDPR and the protection of my data and what I need to do, but now I'm in a new world. Can you tell me a little bit about, I guess, the UAE in particular, because we're in Dubai, and because it's a very progressive government.
Yes.
Look at real estate. You just look around and see what's going on. We had some really bad floods, but very quickly the infrastructure had evolved to make drainage more efficient very, very quickly. So I guess my question to you is, what does a company have to consider if it's a smaller company? Call it 10 to 50 employees. What considerations would someone need to have based in Dubai? So they've just set up from Canada or from America or UK.
Certainly. Of course, a lot of it has to come down to understanding, one, how to do business in Dubai, and also being able to do business elsewhere, right? So We are living in a very technological world where there's no borders really. So yes, we are in the UAE, we're in Dubai, and there's a lot of change and evolution here, whether it be in just the landscape or business. However, in order to perform those business transactions, we still have to interact with outside bodies that have their own regulations, own standards.
Yeah.
And to my understanding, with the UAE, they've started to implement specific cybersecurity regulations in order to ensure as much as possible, because you have to keep in mind the government can only do so much to mandate certain things to a business, right?
Sure.
There are certain cybersecurity frameworks that the UAE has implemented in order to find a way for the small, medium-sized businesses, or even the heavily regulated businesses, to be more cyber secure. The reason for that is because in order for any nation to be proficient and efficient with being able to conduct business with other countries, other operations, other businesses,
Yeah.
they have to have the same level of cybersecurity
Sure.
or resilience to be able to say, well, it's like me saying, Harris, I'm going to trust you with my stuff.
Yeah.
Do I know I can trust you?
Yeah.
And then you'll have to show me, well, yes, of course, Jason, you can trust me. I've done this. I've locked away your stuff in a safe. It's in my house. It's under lock and key, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm going to do business with somebody else and they say, well, your stuff is in the hut and it's surrounded by a lot of, potential, problems.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to do business with you.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
So as such, I would say for any small and medium-sized business that tends to think about, what, we have to be concerned about how much money we're spending or what we're spending on. It would be quite important to consider cybersecurity and IT, for that matter, something that is definitely part of the operational budget.
Yeah.
Because for the most part, and this is this is consistent, I would believe, based on my experiences, that whether it be North America or the UK or even here in the UAE, most business owners are only thinking about, okay, well, we got to get this done.
Yeah.
However, they forget quite quickly that, computers and IT and cybersecurity are not that important to them at the moment.
Sure.
Until they get hit with something.
Yeah.
Right. So whether it be malware, ransomware, what have you. Marks and Spencer's, I'm sure, has a group of IT people that are fairly capable. I'm sure they did what they had to do. However, that's a larger organization and they still managed to get taken out.
For sure.
Right. So consider what would happen then as a small business that relies heavily on technology.
So I was talking to someone recently who was saying that if I have a business here, I've got staff, I've got laptops, I've got guys out in the field selling as well, that I should have a annual a pen test.
Yes.
So from my understanding, that's a requirement. And is that something that like what's it involve? Like if someone says to you, I want you guys to do a pen test for us.
Sure, of course. A penetration test for all intents and purposes is a technical test where a ethical hacker would probe and prod at a network and determine if there's vulnerabilities that are exploitable. Sure. So there's a big difference between a vulnerability assessment and a penetration test. What you'll find with less knowledgeable or less informed individuals, CEOs and COOs, is sometimes they could get bamboozled into thinking that they're getting a penetration test, which is the active search for vulnerabilities and exploitation. There's this thing also called a vulnerability assessment.
That sounds a bit more top level, that it doesn't go deep.
That's exactly it, right? But sometimes, unfortunately, it gets sold as a full-blown penetration test because they're saying, oh, well, we've told you here, based on our scan and our work, that there's vulnerabilities we found. The difference, again, with a penetration test is an ethical hacker would seek to exploit those vulnerabilities to ensure that it's actually exploitable so that there's an action taken against it to protect from it.
My business partner, so we have a company called Food to Fertilizer, and he in the UK owns restaurant chains, and he's got all sorts of business going on.
Sure.
And he had everything. So Junaid's one of our business partners, obviously.
Yes.
And they spoke, and he had everything in his personal Google Drive, with the password being something that had his date of birth or something in it.
Sure, of course.
And I'm talking like ownership of land, properties, like everything. And it's not just him. Even myself, when I look at my Google Drive after that meeting.
Sure.
I was like, there's so much in here that probably shouldn't just be here. One password
No,
that
yeah.
someone could probably guess,
Yeah.
So it's really interesting because, again, like you say, running a company, our last company here in the UK had about 40 odd staff. We had 3 stores running across London and Manchester. We didn't really consider it until someone asked the question, going, by the way, by the way. And then I was like, okay, do you know what? It's grown. The company isn't 3 of us anymore.
That's
we
right,
really
yeah.
need to consider this and then budget for it as well. And that's
Yeah.
another one that's really interesting. Can I talk about CrowdStrike? CrowdStrike is a software owned by Microsoft.
No, CrowdStrike is owned by CrowdStrike.
It's owned by okay, fine. Not in affiliation or working with Microsoft then.
No.
Okay, fine. Well, I did say lack of knowledge before we started.
No,
didn't I?
no, yeah, no worries.
I remember in the news, airlines, like there was just like a North American UK crash.
Sure. Yes.
Airports closed, healthcare affected.
Yeah.
What happened at that point?
So, a quick description of what happened was essentially CrowdStrike, in order for it to work, CrowdStrike is also an EDR tool, an endpoint detection and response tool. It relies heavily on being able to access the inner workings of the Microsoft operating system Windows, right?
Sure.
So,
Okay.
Windows 10, Windows 11, Windows 7.
Got it.
Um,
This episode is sponsored by Axiom 360. I actually work with Axiom as a strategic growth advisor, helping lead the global expansion of the brand. Axiom has been operating in North America for 20 years, and here's a reality that most businesses don't actually think about. Everything runs smoothly, everything's working, until a day it doesn't. It just takes one phishing email, one outdated system, or one missed patch, and your entire business could come to a standstill. And that's where Axiom comes in. We're your end-to-end IT and cybersecurity solutions partner. We're here to keep your business protected, productive, and always one step ahead. Because today, it's not about if your business will face a cyber threat, it's about when. Call me cynical, but it is the truth. I'm going to give you a quick breakdown of the services that we offer at Axiom 360. Before I do that, I'll mention that whilst we are still very active in North America, our expansion at the moment is in a phased approach. At the moment, we're launching in the UK and Europe, and also the Middle Eastern markets. But if you're not in those regions, just DM us and we can definitely have a chat with you anyway. The first solution we offer at Axiom is managed IT services, your outsourced IT department, 24/7, 365, working with you to support you, give you proactive maintenance and strategic guidance tailored to your business. The second solution is cybersecurity and threat protection. We protect your business from ransomware, phishing attacks, and data breaches with enterprise-grade security. The third solution we have is compliance and risk management. We help you stay audit ready and compliant with data privacy laws and industry-specific regulations. And finally, the fourth solution we provide is technology strategy and consulting. We don't just fix problems, we help you plan smarter, scale faster with your technology and your growth goals. You'll find a link in the bio to this video, and you can also DM us directly, email us directly, and get in touch. Just have a chat, there's no obligation. Find out if your data is secure. We'll give you a complimentary audit that's non-intrusive, just to highlight if you have any issues or if you're at risk at all. So just to end and mention that this episode is sponsored by Axiom 360. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show.
in order for a piece of software to be, I guess, for lack of better words, trusted by Microsoft and its operating system, and to be able to gain access to certain parts of the operating system, specifically the kernel. The kernel is what really powers the ins and outs of what an operating system can and cannot do. Right. CrowdStrike was given license or access to be able to, I guess for lack of better words, update accordingly, right? But I think, and you'll have to forgive me because I don't quite know everything about it, but what I believe happened is that they had access to that kernel, and normally they're supposed to be certified for it by Microsoft. Yeah. But it was an odd workaround whereby they were able to use the allowance that Microsoft gave them to continue to patch the kernel. And keep in mind, these are things that they were doing to protect the operating system from malware. However, what ended up happening was that patch was unfortunately, we'll say, untested, and as such created a firestorm of downtime for a lot of organizations. Normally, these patches or changes to the kernel are supposed to be vetted with Microsoft so that it doesn't create a problem like this. But as such,
Sure. I look at a problem or a business fixing an issue, and so many moons ago, 2016, 2017, I was part of these two founders had an idea about bringing this cool bike out. So I came in from the e-bike industry, and we had a solution where you can ride a fat wheel bike with suspension, off-road, have fun, and it can fold in half and you can put it in your car.
Really cool.
No one had done it, right?
Yeah.
So by telling the story and put it on crowdfunding, Indiegogo, the bike raised $20 million of pre-order.
Wow.
Had those videos not been done, we're still the record breaker in Europe for an e-bike folding bike in Europe, which is pretty cool. So when I look at things like Axiom, and I talk to Nayland, Junaid, and the team in Canada, I'm like, tell me about your business, tell me about what we're doing with marketing. Like I said, I did a dive into that. I was told by the team that none of the clients were affected at that point. So, big companies, airlines were all like shut down.
Right.
And I'm like, how did you do that? Like, how are your customers just like, the ones that pay a monthly fee? So Axiom is the managed service provider.
Right.
How come no one was affected and their data was not harmed even? And the business carried on ticking over as normal. So from my understanding, you guys have there's like a jigsaw puzzle of tools, and CrowdStrike probably wasn't the one to go for based on the R&D, right?
Yeah. So early on, when I was still actively working with Nayland and Axiom, we moved to use another EDR tool. Actually, there were several EDR tools, but the primary one was SentinelOne at the moment, which is CrowdStrike's main competitor for the most part.
Yeah.
SentinelOne is just architecturally different from CrowdStrike.
Sure.
The software itself was able to live without the need for cloud resources, unlike CrowdStrike was.
Yeah.
And as such, when the CrowdStrike thing hit, it didn't affect any of the clients because there were no clients using CrowdStrike, right? Which is good.
Yeah.
But certainly there's a lot more tools out there, that are EDR tools that, can replace SentinelOne.
Yeah.
We've come to a point where, that sector, I guess, of the IT industry, the EDR sector is much more advanced. And there's more entrants going in there, one of which is Microsoft, actually. Microsoft Defender is their default tool, and it's actually quite good as well. But by no means am I selling any specific tool at this point.
Sure.
I think the most important thing to keep in mind is for an organization to really be aware of what they're trying to achieve. There's certain things that some EDR tools do better, much like everything else in the world. Some businesses do things better than the others.
Sure.
And as such, they would require some research on that. And if they don't have the capability to do so, that's where a VCIO or Axiom or VCISO would be able to assist with that.
Because I'm sure there are MSPs that have access to within their teams a VCIO, but someone like me who runs a company might not even know that or use that facility, or you know what I mean? I was just thinking that when I was learning more about it, I was like, actually, we probably had someone that was supposed to have been doing XYZ or looking at the licenses and going, oh, we've got too many.
Right.
If we've onboarded or offboarded people for redundancies or whatever, where licenses cancelled, because that can,
Yeah.
I worked for the Virgin Group in the UK for a couple of years, about 15 years ago. And I remember that when the audit was done in the IT department, the amount of laptops just sitting there redundant that hadn't been revamped, cleaned and put out again, instead bought a load more in like hardware.
Right.
And then on top of that, licenses that are. So I'm assuming, and again, assumption that you can clarify, is that something that an MSP should do?
Absolutely.
Right.
Like if an MSP is not doing that, then there's a lack.
Something wrong. Yeah.
We're going to go with the word lack.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
When it comes to your managed services provider is supposed to be your outstretched arm for an IT department, right?
Yeah.
Like their whole purpose is to be able to provide the capabilities of a full-blown IT department.
Sure.
Not just the one IT guy.
Yeah.
One IT guy won't be able to do everything for you. It's just impossible, right? Much like, a business owner, an entrepreneur won't be able to do everything themselves. There's going to be a need for help.
Yeah.
So as such, the managing of licenses and things like that definitely have to fall in play with that.
And there's so much more to it when you dig deeper. And I've been looking into obviously what the requirements are. And I guess the biggest thing for me and why I'm getting involved in IT and I'm getting involved in Axiom as well was because, from my networking, from meeting people, there are such hardworking individuals, founders of companies going, I want to move to this region in particular because, you know, my focus is Saudi, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and obviously the UAE where I live and love.
Sure.
So for me, it's like all these guys are coming in, setting companies up, moving staff over. What are the considerations we need to, you know, factor for budgeting, which you talked about, obviously, because that's real. It's not free.
Absolutely.
But also, you know, a good MSP versus a bad MSP.
Right.
And that's really interesting because, you know, again, I've got my kind of business / branding / marketing hat on when I say, you know, how many marketing agencies would have contacted you over 30 years of business and said, I do this, that, and the other for you.
Sure.
But which ones are the ones that when they're running a campaign will assess and very quickly tweak and adjust, or the visuals aren't really working on this, or let's try something fresh, or other ones that will put it on autopilot and go, they haven't called me in 3 weeks. We're getting them some sales on their website. Let's just leave it at that. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Right.
So those analogies, again, within the IT sector, I guess from people that are from the branding or CEO that aren't really thinking with that CIO hat or the IT hat on. It's an important thing to kind of bring to mind, you know?
No, absolutely. You know, as a business owner, you're really just trying to run a business and, you know, generate revenue, right? Like, it's the bottom line for most entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
But, you know, I would say IT and cybersecurity should be considered much like an accounting department, right?
Yeah.
So you obviously need to know how much money is going in and out in an accounting department. Your operations department, for example, if you're creating things, you need to know how much you're creating, how much loss you're taking, and how much material you need. Yeah. So when it comes to IT and cybersecurity, you need to know, you know, what kind of systems you're using, what regulatory requirements you have as it relates to those systems. Because as an entrepreneur, we're in a digital world, we're consuming a lot of data. Yeah. How are we protecting that data, right? So that's where the cybersecurity aspect comes in. So if most entrepreneurs don't consider IT and cybersecurity as an essential department, and the closest comparison I'll give it to you is this. Most organizations will not realize that they even have IT needs until their computer stops working, or their email starts working, or the internet starts working. That's when the IT guy gets screamed at.
I'm
what have you been
dentistry
doing?
back in now.
Yeah,
I go to the dentist when it's got that point where I'm, okay, do you know what?
Right, exactly.
This is killing. I can't feel my face.
That's right. Like, and you're just there in a hot panic trying to get things fixed.
Yeah.
But you know, normally what you should do is keep at it, right? Like you maintain something as opposed to just doing spot repairs, right? For example, you know, forgive the analogy, but if you weren't brushing your teeth, then you kind of asked for it, right? That's part of the maintenance that you have to do. Yeah. You go to the dentist to get your cleanings every once in a while, make sure there's no plaque buildup and all that stuff. So, you know, that way you avoid those really painful incidences, similar to IT and even accounting for that, you know, for that part. You know, if you're not keeping track of the bookkeeping, well, hey, you know, you're just kind of asking for it at that point.
I've been thinking a lot about writing a book.
Sure.
I have immense experience in business acquisition, just dealing with people of every level in business, face to face, you know, the art of persuasion, closing sales, managing a team, trying to replace yourself, building organizations. You know, I ran a commission only in 2004, commission only sales team that we got to 60 heads I was early 20s, and I was managing a business with 60 heads, and everyone would go out in London and sell contracts. We'd convince you, you'd be walking to a train station on your way to a job. We'd stop you and get your attention and grab it, really annoying people in the street that you'd meet, and convince you to buy a contract, be that IT broadband or whatever it might be. Right. And I felt that I've learned so much about psychology. I'm going to write something. I did a degree, a master's in business psychology and occupational, just the mind. And then, you know, when I learned that you wrote a book, I was like, do you know, this is literally just as I'm thinking about it. So can I ask you a couple of questions? A, why did you write a book? Right. And B, what was it about? And C, would you write more? Is that something that you do out of passion, or was it more just something that was an inspiration then and there? That's just something I want to tick off my list.
Yeah, no, fair enough. So I'll ask them one at a time, I guess. So I wrote the book originally because at the time there was just a lot of confusion when it came to, you know, IT and security, and as I mentioned, there's so many vendors. You know, they kind of bamboozle you with marketing, right? Yeah. And being an entrepreneur, I found myself in a situation where when Axiom was started by Naylan and I, the whole premise behind starting it was to take that responsibility away from the business owner and just say, you know what, we'll do this for you, so you can concentrate on what you're good at, right? Because that way, if you're winning, we're winning, right? That's how it became a company that was funded strictly at the time, early on, by like a lot of referrals.
Yeah.
Right, because with that kind of premise behind it, where you care so much about the success of the organization that you work in tandem with them for their success. So when I built the book, really, or when I co-wrote the book, so to clarify, I co-wrote it with several co-authors. Most of them were American. I was the only Canadian, actually. And the premise behind the book was to provide business owners, small, medium-sized business owners, with more of an idea to understand, okay, well, what is cybersecurity and what it's all about, and how does it apply to IT, and so on and so forth. And at the time, I wrote it, or I helped co-write it, because I wanted organizations to really understand what the threats were out there.
Yeah.
In my parts of the book, I wrote about social engineering, actually. So social engineering is the act of a threat actor to make an individual do something that they may or may not want to do.
Sure.
Right? So it's I guess, for lack of better words, it's hacking people. Is what social engineering is all about. And I wrote about that and gave a description of how it would happen, and I analogize it to a story so that the business owners would be able to read and be like, oh, okay, so that's what happens, right? And it was one of those things, to be honest with you, that I quite enjoyed to do, right? And to answer your question, would I write another book? Absolutely. I'm actually working on another book now that would cover more of my past experiences. So as my career evolved, I worked a lot more with incidences, cybersecurity incidences and breaches, where I was exposed to a lot of law enforcement that I would work in tandem with, a lot of security companies like Mandiant and so on, that essentially allowed me to work with them. They worked with me in order to come to a resolution for an organization that was in tough shape. They've just experienced an incident or a breach. It's one of those things where, I guess, for lack of better words, because IT and cybersecurity is so talked about in the media, that you tend to forget that it's there. So
look, I wouldn't have even seen what I saw, and had I not been just doing a bit of research last night. And I was like, what, Harrods, M&S in the UK?
Right.
And the government's saying we need to really focus on cybersecurity, literally as we speak. There's obviously a reason. It's always very topical.
Certainly, yeah.
And I'm sure this keeps happening. But we almost like park it to the side going, nah, it's nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
We don't need to worry about this. Someone else will take care of it,
Yeah, well,
it'll never happen to me,
That's the kicker. That is the kicker right there. I think everybody believes that, right? So I'm too small for anyone to go after me. I'm not that important. But and it's funny, because the ransomware specifically has become big business, and the dark web and just in general. And there's so many implications to it. So insurance, for example, there's like cyber insurance, the implications of ransomware and its growth, and the offshoot, I guess, threat actor activities creates a problem there. Medical, there's also the risk of using that, the cybersecurity tool, I guess it's not really a cybersecurity tool, it's a hacking tool, for example, like ransomware or malware, towards state-sponsored attacks. And so if you bring it back to a business owner that says, I don't think, this will, it'll never bother me, it'll never get to me. The one thing that they have to understand is that there's multiple reasons for a business to be attacked. Your size is probably a distant, a distant tenth to what that reason could be. But for the most part, you have to keep in mind that, again, digital world, and as such, a small business owner could have exposure to an essential service, a critical service, a medical service, what have you. And if they're the weakest link in the chain, well, hey, as a threat actor, I would go after the weakest link to get into a more essential service, a more juicy target. So do most threat actors care who they're going after? Absolutely not. No. If it's to make money, or if it's state sponsored, it tends to be very targeted. and they will go after a small guy.
Yeah.
And if it was just strictly cybercrime, most of it is motivated by money.
Yeah.
And as such, they're playing the numbers game, right? Whoever they can hit with ransomware and whoever pays out is their payday.
Yeah.
So,
It's really interesting. The thing is, it kind of, I mean, it does worry me a bit actually thinking about it. It must be really interesting. Like the stories you guys have must be so interesting of the journey. You've probably gone into like huge companies going, why are you not even thinking about this? You know, I'm guessing. But anyone that's listening out there that is worried, there will be links in the bio for free audits, free consultation, and we obviously offer the pen testing as well, so we can actually because the other one you mentioned was more high level was called
a vulnerability assessment.
vulnerability assessment. So obviously the next level in is to actually go in ethical hacking. So definitely check that out. And we mentioned Jason's book, so click the link, have a read, give him some feedback for the next book.
Actually, that'd be really good. Actually, so the proceeds for the book actually go to a children's charity called St. Jude's Children's Charity in the United States. So
Amazing.
So as such, all the proceeds go to that.
Yeah, fantastic. We've obviously talked a little on the cybersecurity stuff. We talked about governance, risk, compliance as well. What we didn't really touch on yet that I wanted to, and conscious of your time, I know you've got lots going on and we've got limited time together. Can we talk about sort of backup and disaster recovery? What does that even mean? What's it about, and how does an MSP help a company in that kind of sector or that bucket, so to speak?
Right. No, so backup and disaster recovery is exactly what it sounds like. So it's a solution that would ensure that your critical systems, your IT systems, have a data backup. In the event that somebody.
And is that sorry to interrupt?
Yeah,
Is that a server that's in your office that sits there? Is that something that's in the cloud? Both?
I would say the most resilient types of backup should have a local copy of your backup, but it should also have a cloud version of it that's inaccessible or immutable. Right. So immutability is quite important. When it comes to disaster recovery, that's where a local server is quite important because, I don't know if you've had your computer blow up on you or like you've had to, like the hard drive died or something like that and you had to recover all your files. That's the worst feeling, isn't it? Like it takes forever. And when you are trying to recover that one computer and consider that and compare that to a big server with all this data on it, if the backup is not local, right? Meaning like it's on the same network as your actual server, the time to recovery takes so much longer, right? Because if you have to pull it from the cloud, you have to pull it from AWS or Azure or what have you, you're going to have to download, let's say, gigabytes or even terabytes worth of data, and you could be down for a week. Yeah. Right. So it's important to have a backup solution and a disaster recovery solution that allow you to recover quickly. But also have the capability to just recover even the most smallest things. So let's say you deleted one file. You need to be able to recover that quickly so that you can continue on your business. That backup and disaster recovery solution should have that capability. And the other thing too, as I mentioned, immutability is quite important. Ransomware, forgive me. Ransomware is a malware that basically encrypts all your files, right? So they're there, it's just they're not accessible to you. And most threat actors have realized, well, we're not going to have a payday if they have a backup. Most of the time, they're just going to ignore our ransomware demands and just recover from backup. So over time, they realized, well, sure, if the backup is here locally, there must be a cloud system as well. Let's go after that and hit it with ransomware, so it's also encrypted. So there's no way for them to recover, and they would have payout. Immutability gives the that protection against it, because if they do, if a threat actor manages to encrypt one version of a backup, which is the local one, for example, the immutable capability of the cloud system would defend against the threat actors, attacks at it, so it doesn't get encrypted.
So you can very much plan for these disasters ahead.
Absolutely.
And get everything ready. So if this happens, we're going to do this.
Absolutely.
And that's, I guess, really protecting your business ahead of time rather than trying to pick up the pieces afterwards when you get that call, when you got that, okay, it's too late. We could have done this to save. And people genuinely pay out money and get
well, so actually it's funny. So just we can touch on that real quick. So in my travels, I've worked with, and I continue to work with, the insurance industry.
Right.
So as I mentioned to you earlier, there is a tool called cyber insurance Right? Cyber insurance essentially insures you in the event that something like this occurs, like a ransomware incident. I would say, oddly enough, there's not enough people that know about it. Right. And it's something that could potentially save you in many ways. And what I wanted to point out was, in order to get cyber insurance, a friend of mine, he loves to say it, like, you have to be this tall to ride. And what that basically means is that you have to have certain security measures in place in order for you to be insurable.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Backup and disaster recovery is definitely one of those things. And keep in mind, with an insurance company, they do have to go through your typical process. You submit an application and you fill out all their questions. A lot of these questions are based on your cybersecurity controls, what you do not have or what you do have, and they want to know all that because if they want to understand in general your maturity level when it comes to being able to defend yourself against an attack, essentially, right? And as such, with regards to cyber insurance, cyber insurance is just a tool. I would not consider it something where if you bought cyber insurance, that's it.
You're now protected.
Like you're not. That is not what it's supposed to do. Cyber insurance is a risk transference tool, right?
Makes sense.
But you still have to, continuously work with your managed service provider, continuously work with a CIO or a cybersecurity professional to keep enhancing your cybersecurity posture to ensure resilience. Because you asked me about backup and disaster recovery, that's its whole point. It needs to make your company resilient. And if your backup cannot do that, then you have to ask some questions.
One thing I'm getting from our conversation and just all the different elements we're talking about is the importance of having a good managed service provider. I go back to this because I really didn't think about it until, again, we started talking about the fact that there are people that are doing substandard jobs that aren't really taking care of your data, planning for disasters, giving you updates with regards to progressive governments like the UAE saying, by the way, a lot of people might not know they even have to get a pen test done and then they get a fine because they haven't done it, for example, right? So this is where that knowledge and that having that team in place that's a real extension to your team and that managed service as well is so important. So
certainly,
I guess in terms of your goal, going back to the start where we talk about Dubai, you've obviously come here to enjoy 40 degrees centigrade heat, no doubt, because the saunas can be quite expensive back home. What else what are you doing here? What are the plans?
At the moment, I'm working with Axiom to help, much like you are, in expanding their business out here to help them grow and to at the same time help them establish their presence. There's just so much to do with regards to IT and cybersecurity that they ask me for my assistance and for my expertise, and whether it be building businesses, building networks, applying cybersecurity to those networks and such. So in a consultative role, I'm basically helping them to grow it here. Right. So
I think for me, when I came and I met with my partner Junaid and met with Naylan, I was just, it really opened my mind up. My brother's been in IT for decades, and I've seen him, have a great life and then all the different things he's done. He's in ITIL and whatever else, but really amazing jobs across Saudi, and it gave him that kind of, A, I'm helping, B, I get paid a good amount of money, C, I can see the world. So for me, it was like, okay. But then as I've gone deeper into it, I realized the absolute importance for a business, especially now that I've grown up to a point where now we have businesses, and I'm like, and I meet people all the time, and when I ask them, so many people that have these smaller companies, I'm talking like 10, 15, 20 heads, haven't even thought about it. Like, well, we've got a password on our thing, and this, I'm like, guys, this, like, you speak to Junaid. And for anyone that's listening today, obviously, and wants to contact us directly, wants to connect with Jason directly or any of our team, definitely there's going to be a link in the description, a link in the bio as well. I strongly recommend. It doesn't cost to talk to us, and therefore you can at least see where are you protected, like your cyber insurance. Someone might say, I've got the cyber insurance, and I thought that was enough. This is where we can come in and go, actually, maybe not. Let's talk. Cool. And in terms of the growth potential specifically to this region, can we talk about that for a minute just to wrap up? Because I'm very focused, and I keep going back to it about the GCC because this is now my home, and everyone I know in the new network that I'm making friends with is here or in Saudi. So I guess talking to these guys that are listening, what's your thoughts on the current infrastructure and companies that are here, and B, with this growth that we talk about, especially in the kingdom and across here, kind of where people, what should people be doing or thinking about when registering a company, when bringing their teams over? Because obviously they still trade across the globe, but I guess what's the message to a small business owner that's thinking now, okay, this is really interesting, and I've not thought about disaster recovery even.
Yeah.
Sorry, pardon me.
In general terms, I'd say that, if a small business owner was thinking of starting a company out here, they really have to, as I mentioned to you, be prepared, like understand, what it is and what it's going to take to be here. From what I've seen so far, the technological advancements that the UAE is putting, towards, gaining more, has been quite staggering. It's quite impressive, actually. And, if you're a business owner or a potential entrepreneur that's looking to start something here, it would be quite important for you to understand, well, how do I navigate, the way the UAE is building itself out? Because if you don't do that properly, then you will fall behind.
Sure.
Right? And a lot of if the UAE's current focus is in IT, cybersecurity, and AI, right? Those are the things that you need to be able to be compatible with or adaptable to, or else you will be definitely left behind.
Yeah.
So there will be somebody that'll eat your lunch,
Sure. I'm eating my own lunch, brother.
That's all right.
Amazing. We'll wrap up on that.
Sure, yeah.
Thank you very much for your time, and thanks for coming in. I know you've got a very busy schedule. Really interesting, thought-provoking, and like I said, very topical right now as I see even back home in the UK what's going on.
Sure, yeah.
And it's actually a worldwide thing. But when I look at my own regions, I'm like, actually, we really need to shine a light on this and at least think, talk, discuss. Right. And then take it from there. So yeah, thank you very much, Jason.
Thanks so much, Aaron.
Pleasure. All the best. Take care.